color. We are loonies and we are proud.
We've never had a loony in the family before you.
I'm no hell. I'm going to be a professional DJ, whether you like it or not. I want you to teach me everything you know. We're going to make this the most outrageous and original hospital broadcasting outfit in the country. Think of the angle, the publicity. Loonies take over asylum at St. Jude's.
The turntables are spinning. Will the St. Jude's sound take over the asylum? Tuesday at 9 on BBC Two.
I've never been good at anything before, Eddie.
Now on BBC Two, this is Dennis Hopper, upfront and candid. The Maverick speaks out.
Good evening. The career of American actor, writer, director Dennis Hopper spans an amazing 5 decades. Amazing, not just because he has survived the rigors of the movie business for so long, but that he has survived, period. Hopper is the definitive Hollywood rebel. He's worked with such legendary directors as Henry Hathaway and Nick Ray, and acted with the likes of Marlon Brando, James Dean, John Wayne, and Jack Nicholson. He's also abused his mind and body with just about every chemical substance known to man. Moving Pictures presents a completely frank documentary about the outrageous life and times of Dennis Hopper. From his first television appearance to his LA gang movie Colors, there are the binges and breakdowns, the blockbusters and box office disasters. This 1-hour program made in America features Hopper himself, his family, and fellow filmmakers Francis Ford Coppola, Roger Corman, and David Lynch. They'll be our guides on a white-knuckle ride into the mind of Hollywood's most dangerous man. Hold on tight.
I mean, he reached the point where he was insane. And he reached the point, with the hospital visit him, say hello to him, and between hello, how are you, was maybe 10 minutes. He went, totally lost his cookie.
I remember calling Central City Hospital and talking to the doctors, and they were saying, we really think he's practically brain dead.
Head out on the highway, looking for adventure, and whatever comes our way. Yeah, gotta go make it happen. Take the world in a loving way. Fire all of the guns, explode into space like a true nature child. We were born to be wild. We can climb so high. I never wanna die. Born to be wild. Born to be wild.
Easy Rider. It didn't really matter. I think that Peter and myself and Jack were in this film so much as the film was something that an audience would go to and see what they would like to think of themselves as a counterculture, and the idea of people dropping out. Easy Rider showed a lot of things that people had not seen before, like, for example, smoking marijuana without going out and killing a bunch of nurses.
They think we're going to cut their throat or something, man. They're scared, man. Well, they're not scared of you. They're scared of what you represent to them. Amen. All we represent to them, man, is somebody who needs a haircut. What you represent to them is freedom. What the hell's wrong with freedom, man? That's what it's all about. Oh, yeah, that's right.
A candy-colored clown they call the Sandman.
tiptoes to my room every night, just to sprinkle stardust and to whisper, so to see everything is all right. I close my eyes.
Let's fuck! I'll fuck anything that moves!
Dennis is hooked into something that's very American in the coolest sort of way. He's sort of the perfect American dangerous hero, and I don't know quite how it all happened.
My early memories of, like, Kansas or like sort of classical stuff. I was raised on sort of a small little farm, little rural area. There was a ditch in front of the house, a lot of weeds, very fertile place, Kansas, and dirt road in front, mailbox, country road. I used to go up where the train went by, wondering where the trains were going. My grandmother used to fill her apron full of eggs, and we'd walk in, 7 miles, whatever it was, into town, and sell the eggs at the poultry place and go to the matinees and see Roy Rogers and Gene Autry. And Wild Bill Elliott was my favorite because he wasn't a singing cowboy. In summer, all the combines came from Oklahoma. Trains with combines would go by. Lay in the ditch and watch with my dog.
Grandmother read him every child's book in the Dodge City Library before he started kindergarten, and was reading him novels. We didn't live where there were a lot of children, so he only knew children when he was at school. As a little tiny child, he didn't have anyone to play with.
Born to be wild. Born to be wild.
My grandfather had an old truck where the water usually is on a where you put the water in a radiator. That was the gas, where the gas went in. So I used to lay on the hood and take the lid off and sniff the gasoline. And then I'd lay back and I'd look up in the sky and I'd see clouds and I'd see all these fantasies of stuff in the clouds. And I'd get very high. And then one time I flipped out. I don't remember this, but when I came to, I was breaking I was attacking this monster, which was the truck itself, with the baseball bat, and breaking out the lights and the windshield and so on. And that was the end of my sniffing gasoline. Then when I moved to San Diego, I told my parents that I wanted to take acting lessons. They were horrified at the idea, but I started taking classes and later started playing small parts at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego.
He was the only high school student that ever got to be in the Shakespeare Festival. They were all college students. He was 18. He had $200 and he went to Hollywood. We didn't want him to go. We said, when you run out of your $200, you come home or call us and we'll come get you. He had no car, nothing. Before Christmas, he did a medic show, and he came out smelling like a rose.
Yeah, I thought I'd drop in a minute. I just talked to Dr. Moore. Says I'm pretty well. Doesn't think I'll have any more trouble. I keep thinking of a poem I read a long time ago. The last verse. It's called Stanzas to Augusta. He was very much in love with her, but it was hopeless because she was his sister.
Wilbert, what is it? What's the matter?
The next day, 7 studios called and wanted to put me under contract, the possibility of going under contract. The first one was Columbia. I donned my tie and my suit, and I went with my agent to Columbia Pictures. Now, I'd never been in a studio. It was all like really, really new. I was goo-goo gaga. I was taken into a man's office named Harry Cohn. He also had a psychological ploy of a very long room with his desk at the end of this long room. And behind that desk were these rainbow effects of Academy Awards. By the time I got to this desk, this long walk there, I was sweating. I found a crack in the ceiling. I was really nervous. I'd never seen Academy Award, much less been a, it was all like really simple. He said, I saw you in the show last night, kid. And he said, I got to tell you. He said, you're really natural. It's really natural. He said, really good. I think I'd like the suburbs. He said, tell me what you've been doing. What you've been doing recently. And I said, well, I've been playing Shakespeare. Shakespeare, oh my God, Max. He said, give the boy some numbers, put him in school for 6 months or a year, and take all that Shakespeare out of him. We can't have any of that. That's Shakespeare. God, that's not natural at all. That's really broad stuff. We don't do that in movies. And at that point, I stopped looking at the crack in the ceiling. I focused on him. I stopped sweating. And I said, go fuck yourself. I went to Warner Brothers, and they said they'd give me a contract, put me under contract, if Nicholas Ray would put me in there without a cause, with the possibility of playing the son in Giant. And I went and saw Nick, and he said he would put me in the film. And so I was put under contract to Warner Brothers for the sum of $200 a week, I believe. I started.
Oh, don't worry. I'll figure out what we are going to do with them.
Okay.
Look, you'll figure it out.
I see Dean, and I see him work. I'd never seen acting like that before. He's way over my head. He's doing stuff that I just don't understand. And our relationship was one of a student and a teacher. He'd talk to me about acting. He'd stand at the corner of a soundstage and watch me doing my, walking along. And he'd come and say, come here. What were you just doing? What were you just thinking about? And he'd give me little advice. Or he'd come in and watch me secretly when I was doing a scene. He'd tell me something about it. He was much different than any of the other actors. He told me that he had Brando in this hand saying, fuck you, and he had Montgomery Clift in this hand saying, please forgive me, and somewhere in the middle was James Dean, and this is why he would be remembered.
You ever been in a chickie run?
Yeah. That's all I ever do.
I grabbed Jimmy and I threw him into a car. And I said, until I saw you, I was the greatest young actor in the world. Like, I don't understand what you're doing because I know that you are now, and I can't deal with it. I don't know how to deal with it. He said, whoa, slow down. He said, what's your drive for wanting to be an actor? I only had the drive to want to be good. So he said, that drive will make you an actor.
Me down here to insult my wife. And you're going to answer for it.
Aren't you the one who married a squaw? What's the matter, boy? Just having a good time?
Get him up, Brink. Everybody knows you got this coming to you.
Jordy, no.
Get him up, Brink. Just do it.
Jimmy said, you were great today. My eyes teared up, and I got tears in my eyes, and they started coming down my face. And he said, thank you. He said, see what you're doing right now? See those tears? Those are tears to show me that you appreciate what I'm saying to you. But those are tears you shouldn't use in acting. He said, when you really have to cry, cry so that you have to leave the room.
My first impression of Dennis is probably the first scene that we did on the film from Hell to Texas. He was a very, very volatile young man, and he had a terrible, terrible relationship with the director, Henry Hathaway.
He was the most charming man at dinner. We'd have these wonderful dinners together. And he would tell me all these things. And like, I'd say, Mr. Hathaway, now on this scene, these things could happen. So it's a great idea, kid. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And the next day on the set, I'd say, but Henry, this is like, he said, that's dinner talk, kid. Dinner talk. God damn it, just do what I tell you. And he would give you line readings. He'd give you every gesture. Just on. It was a nightmare.
Dennis, it was kind of like the bad kid in school that you're glad that he's there because no matter what you do, his behavior is so much worse that it lets you off the hook. That's what Dennis was like. He would question every direction that Henry Hathaway would give him. Say, why? Why should I do that? Why should I go over here instead of going over here?
My last day on the film, I had a 10-line scene, the weakling son of the dead. I came in the studio at 6 in the morning. He was there. He was so happy. He says, you know what those are, kid? And I looked, and there were film cans stacked. Like, he said, there's enough film there. I said, there's a film can. He said, there's enough film there to shoot for 4 months. I said, wow. He said, we're going to stay here, and we're going to shoot this scene, and you're going to do it my way. You're going to send for lunch. You're going to send for dinner. We're going to sleep here. This is it. So I started at about 7 in the morning, and I did this 10-line scene every way I could possibly think of doing. We sent for lunch at about 12:30. At around 7, they sent for dinner, and about 11 o'clock at night, I finally cracked, started crying, and said, just tell me one more time how you want it. He told me, I did it, he printed it, and I left the studio.
It was quite operatic. 86 takes, in order to, for one line. And just a matter of, I want it my way, and the director wanted it his way. And Hathaway was a very, very, very strong man. Also, Hathaway didn't give a damn. He was in the old school. It was, he was king of the mountain. And Dennis was a very young kid, and Dennis knew what he wanted. Well, it cost Dennis a lot to stick up for what he thought was right.
Warner Brothers dropped me from my contract. And I couldn't get any work in Hollywood at all. I was blackballed for being too difficult. I went to New York to study with Strasberg. I would go to Birdland and see Miles play and go hang out there and go to Downey's every day. So I'd go to the Actors Studio. It was an incredible time. Deranging my senses. I was reading Thomas Wolfe's The Web and the Rock.
Dennis is one of those people, if he's interested in something, if he turns his interest towards something, he's like a vacuum cleaner. He just absorbs it.
I think he operated under the illusion that he could do anything he wanted and that he was a free, independent spirit. He was on the cutting edge. Dennis had an eye and an ear for what was happening at that time. And he was on the scene. If you wanted to know something about what the scene was, Dennis could tell you.
I became very involved, always in the art scene. I always felt that art was a very special place because there was something really incredible about the easel painter, or the studio painter, that he could do his own thing, his own time, and not have to compromise his images and his vision.
He married one of my sisters, a woman I call one of my sisters, Brooke Hayward. And I didn't go to the wedding, but I went to the reception, and I met him. And I thought, this guy's a Looney Tune, but he sure is interesting.
Dennis made me read Huxley's Doors of Perception, and it did sound a bit thrilling, all these colors and all that. So I agreed to take some mescaline, which, as I remember, was one of the most horrific experiences. He intrigued me further with the concept that really what he was interested in was film directing, not acting at all, film directing. And that he was a superb photographer. Although he didn't have a camera, I had to take it on faith that he was a superb photographer. All he really wanted was a camera. I'd never met anybody like him.
He did have excellent perception. He really could see form and substance. You know, he really could understand not just the framing with the camera, but the framing with the light.
I couldn't get a job in the motion picture industry for, I would say, 7, 8 years, however long it was, I'm not quite sure, until Hathaway rehired me again for the Sons of Katie Elder, playing the same role, the weakling son of the bad man. Peter at this time was a tremendous star. He had made Wild Angels at AIP, and he was big. He came up with an idea. He rattled off something about these guys smuggling some drugs and getting these shiny new bikes and going across country and going to Mardi Gras in New Orleans and then going off into like Florida to retire from the money they'd gotten from the drug deal.
It's not 100 motorcyclists on their way to a Hells Angels funeral. It's the two guys, just like John Wayne and John A. are searching across the West. Yeah, searching across the West for America.
Everybody was using drugs. I mean, everybody that was hip was using drugs. I mean, there was a whole hippie phenomenon in 1967. There were riots in the cities in the United States. The cities were burning down. I said, Peter, hey, it sounds like a great idea to me.
I said, well, I figured we both write it, you direct it, I produce it, we both act in it, we can save some money. I think it could be a commercial story.
I pulled into Nazareth, was feeling about half-past dead. I just need some place where I can lay my head.
I was the executive producer on Easy Rider in the early stages. It was to be done for AIP. And the executives at AIP became a little bit worried about Dennis's ability to complete the film.
When we were finally down to really getting it together, they had changed their mind about, they said I could either act in it or direct it, but I couldn't do both.
Jack Nicholson, who had a deal at Columbia at the time, and he called Dennis and Peter and said, I know you're having troubles at AIP. Bring the film over to Columbia. We'll back you, and I will play the third role. And AIP lost Easy Rider on that basis.
You boys don't look like you're from this part of the country. You're lucky I'm here to see that you don't get into anything.
Anything?
Well, they got this here, Scissor Happy Beautify America thing going on around here. They're trying to make everybody look like Yul Brynner.
Dennis and I had to make our own song, to do it our way, not do it with somebody else's attitude or somebody else's moral standard. Dennis had all the insight. I never doubted that I wanted him to direct. But even through the speed and the wine, he was clear, he was concise.
We did it. We did it. I mean, you go for the big money, man, and then you're free. You dig?
You blew it.
Good night, man.
Dennis, with all of his craziness, has always been dedicated to whatever he wanted to do. A lot of people always say to me, how did you guys ever manage to make pictures with, with what you were on, what you were doing, what you're into? And I always try to tell people that what we were into had nothing to do with what we were making films. What we really were into was making the film. Anything else was an adjunct to that. We never, ever lost sight of the film that we were making.
Hey, Lord, look at him again. Well, time, let's get the hell out of him. Want me to throw your brains out? Why don't you get a haircut? What happened? We thought I'd go by.
Dennis and Peter believed very greatly in that film. They made, I think, one of the significant films of the 1960s.
Jack told me that we were geniuses. We went to a hot springs at night and, with a beautiful young Spanish Indian woman. And we were all nude in this hot springs, and suddenly we'd dropped some acid. We'd actually taken the acid at D.H. Lawrence's tomb. We'd laid down there and we were watching the insects. I was watching the insects anyway, and Jack was laying next to me, and we were laying in front of D.H. Lawrence's tomb, looking up at the sun, and I said, Jack, wow, it's just like those insects. He says, no, you think so? And I said, yeah, man, just that insignificant. So later when we went to the hot springs, and we were naked there, and I had my knife out there, some drunk came out of the thing to try to grab the young girl. I pulled the knife and scared Jack and the young girl and the drunk and myself. So like at that point, the girl got in the car and Jack said, we better run this off or something or whatever. But anyway, we were in front of the lights running naked down this mountain, And Jack said, insects, man, we're geniuses. That's what we are. We're geniuses like Lawrence, man. We're them, I said, yeah, Jack, really? Yeah? Wow. My inspiration for it was on the Sons of Katie Elder. We were down in Durango, Mexico. They had built sets of this western town on real people's homes, so the real people lived there. And there was a real church there, Catholic church, and then they'd made this Protestant, little white church across there that, and they'd built all these sets, and people still lived there, and they still rode horses, and they still carried guns. I thought, God, this is strange, what's going to happen to these people once we leave? And this is where I thought, wow, what if they start acting out the violence of this violent Western, this shoot-'em-up Western?
Damn you! God damn you! Bingo!
The Indians still have guns and horses, and they start playing the parts, and they make a camera out of sticks. My first thing is get this done. So I went to Mexico and I suddenly ran into censorship. Everywhere I went, they said, no, you got to have a censor on the set. We can't let you show children in poverty or children without shoes. And suddenly I said, hey, I didn't make Easy Rider and get free here to come to a country that's not going to let me make a movie my way.
We ended up going to Cusco, Peru. I think we were working at 11,000 feet, and it was a collection of of just the most far-out actors, just a whole bunch of them. We were all part of the movie that was within the movie.
But then somewhere near Salinas, Lord, I let her slip away. Looking for the home I hope she'll find.
Everyone was aware that Dennis had achieved this enormous success with Easy Rider. Out of nowhere, he was absolutely on top of the world. So when people get into a film like that, they feel like they're all of a sudden on top of the world. It was very celebratory.
I would have felt hurt if I wasn't able to go down and be a part of that activity. But it was really crazy down there. Whoa.
There was a lot of cocaine around, a lot of cocaine. As I remember, every time you turned around, somebody had a spoon.
It was a 30-mile trek up into the mountains where a film had never been made. It was raining. People were, saying we're not going to do it. All the stuntmen quit at one point and then decided they would do it anyway. And there was a number of elements that just wanted to get us. It was an 8-week shooting schedule, and at least once a week, some element of 3 or 4 elements would come in and, confiscate things and whatever, and it's extremely difficult.
No matter what we were doing and what we were into, the main thing was what he wanted to do, what he wanted to do, what he wanted to create. We always cared more about the picture than anything else.
Wasted in a dungeon.
I brought back 48 hours of film. None of it had I seen, and suddenly now I was going to cut this and make a movie out of it. I had wanted to go back to Taos. I had this desire. I mean, I always say the sacred mountain grabbed me or something, but I had this pull that I wanted to go back there, that this was a magic place, and I wanted to go back and feel the magic. I brought all my editors there, and my brother there was my associate producer, and 3 editors and their families, and I had my editing room there and so on. I bought a little movie theater in the town that I could use as a projection room. I bought the Mabel Dodge Lujan house, which Mabel Dodge had brought George O'Keeffe and Robertson Jeffers and D.H. Lawrence and on, all these artists, Stuart Davis and so on. It all come to this artist utopian that she had. It was a house that had 13 bedrooms with separate entrances. It made a wonderful whorehouse.
Trying to get him into the cutting room was really difficult because there were so many people pulling on him. And also at that time, he was trying to refurbish the Mabel Dodge Lujan house, which is where we lived. And he had tons of Indians around there fixing the house and stuccoing, and he was always having to sign checks and have these meetings with his brother about needing more money.
I told him that I was going to be in the 15th with the picture. There's no way I can be in the 15th with the picture.
My original thing was... Essentially, the house was open, and people came. Alan Watts, George McGovern, Nick Ray, Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan, the Everly Brothers, Ricky Nelson, you name it. It was impossible to keep people out. And everybody who came to Taos from Los Angeles wanted to stay with Dennis Hopper or visit Dennis Hopper. I would come in to get a beer out of the refrigerator or to have some breakfast in the morning. There'd be 30 people sitting in the kitchen. 28 of them I didn't know.
One Thanksgiving, he gave a huge Thanksgiving dinner at this huge table in the dining room, and there were just thousands of people packed in there. It was like an audience. It was like this huge, it was like incredible. I mean, there were people sitting around the main table, but then there were people standing up all around as he asked me to say a prayer for Thanksgiving.
Tell you what happened. You talking about on your cut piece of film? Yeah. What happens is you have him come in, a gun kicked out of his hand, he looks at them, and
Dennis was at a peak, he was at a creative peak in his life. But he was also, he'd been divorced, he'd had trouble with women, he was doing a lot of booze, a lot of drugs. He had a 7-day marriage with Michelle Phillips, which kind of turned everything upside down.
Oh, now you're looking for a woman, you're looking for a star. Well, baby, look around, where the hell you think so? Oh, now you're looking for the sun, you say you're looking for
you're dropping. And she's got to believe that you're not going to drop her.
Hey, the bed will drop before you drop her.
We drank Irish coffee, snorted cocaine, and smoked really good marijuana all the way. We would work 3 days and nights at a time.
Dennis and I had got the film down to about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And when he got the call that they were coming out, he said, I want you to put back all those other scenes. I said, why do you want to do that, Dennis? He said, because I want him to see everything. I said, yeah, but it's going to be 3 hours long. After the screening, we were all going to go back to the house, and the guys with the suits got in their car and said, well, we'll meet you back at the house. And we said, okay. And they had a big dinner planned and all of that. And David went with them. And Dennis and I wound up staying at the bar getting loaded, drinking beer and tequila. And we got there very late, needless to say. There was no party. There was no dinner. And the suits were, I guess, pissed off or upset or something because they left the next morning. I never did see them again. There was a lot of sadness and there was a lot of depressed feelings about what to do with the picture.
It took us 18 months to edit the film.
The one where he looks up here to the...
The last movie was one of my best because I won the Venice Film Festival with it. So that was one of my best.
Bergman, Fellini were among the judges. And Bergman really said it best. Bergman said that the last movie was the first time that a director had dealt with the responsibility of the magical apparatus of film.
The last movie was a new kind of movie to me. And after having won the Venice Film Festival and coming back and like a kid who'd won the World Series by himself, Universal said they weren't going to distribute it and we must have bought the award, and they find out they didn't buy the award.
They didn't even give it a chance. I remember that it only showed for a couple of days or something like that, and they pulled it right out and shelved it. I mean, they just didn't even want it shown.
I was really angry. After all, I'd made The Easy Rider, and I'd written it, directed it, and acted in it, and so I make the last movie, and I win the Venice Film Festival. Surely, I'm going to have all sorts of offers to make other films, But in point of fact, I don't get any offers except to act in a film called Kid Blue.
I don't come from around here. No. I don't work in their damn factory. So they can kick me around like a slave boy. You can't have pride. Those people making you eat cow chips all day long for a few nickels. No, sir.
I don't need no cow shit.
I ate some one time. Not too bad if you're hungry. Not hungry? Don't eat cow shit.
Do you work around here?
Word. You like to word.
That's what I come here to do, to work.
He was trying all the time. He was on the phone all the time trying to get jobs. He got more and more depressed because the same guys that he had made millions of dollars wouldn't give him a job.
I have no doubt in my mind that whether they did it overtly or whether it was done by subterfuge or how it was done, that certain things went down that affected Dennis's ability to work.
Being in Taos and being isolated was part of it, but at the same time, they wouldn't hire him in L.A.
But he was painting at the time. He was writing poetry. He's always been with his creative outlet. And he would have gone back to film in a minute had somebody offered him a film to do. I mean, had we had a chance to do a film, he would have done it.
The stories of my drinking, my escapades with guns, and drug dealing, and on and on and on, go on until the point that Dennis Hopper feels sorrier and sorrier and sorrier for himself. And he gets farther and farther into addiction and alcoholism.
I remember one night in Taos with Dean and Dennis drinking, and as usual, I usually just would pass out. I just couldn't take it anymore. And Dean and Dennis stayed up, and Dennis was, God, he was just ranting and raving that night about how much he wanted to direct, and he was weeping at one point, you know, that he wanted to direct, and he was just screaming it out, you know. And I just remember, you know, in a half a daze trying to go to sleep saying, God, give him a film to direct, please.
I never had a doubt at all they could do it. I was basically the only filmmaker of anybody who was involved in what we were doing there. And then I insisted on Dennis.
Oh, man. He ain't that bad today. You're not gonna fancy this. I'm a motherfucking asshole, you know that? I did 5 fucking years, you know? In prison. And there were a lot of other kids in there besides your son. Now, am I gonna have to meet every fucking asshole like you, man? Look, I'm an asshole. You see this? You see me? You see those? But I'm not a motherfucking dumb asshole. There's enough here for 2 drinks. Now, you sit down. You sit down and have a drink.
There was a film festival outside of London, and they were showing Out of the Blue, and I just remember my dad got off the plane, and he came running over to me and just like, oh my God, I've just been through customs, and I gotta let you know something. And I said, what? And he said, I have drugs all over my body. I have drugs all over my body. And I got through customs. I was like, oh my God, okay.
He would be in jail every couple months or so for something, and usually something violent and out of control.
I was surprised that he went that far, that his art didn't kick into gear and save him as it had with Easy Rider. Every time he'd get really despaired and more crazed, the art of making the movie and the art of the movie itself would carry him over into his next inspirational mode.
Sometimes he was just so wired and so out there that he couldn't, his mind couldn't track what few little tasks we were asking him. And, you know, when he drank and did all these things, he was just a non-stop manic monologue all the time.
You don't talk to the colonel, well, you listen to him. The man's enlarged my mind.
He's a poet warrior in the classic sense. I mean, sometimes he'll, well, you say hello to him, right? And he'll just walk right by you, and he won't even notice you. And then suddenly he'll grab you, and he'll throw you in a corner, and he'll say, do you know that if is the middle word in life? If you can keep your head when all about you losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you. I mean, I can't, I'm a little man. I'm a little man. He's a great man. I should have been a pair of ragged claws, scuttling across floors of silent seas. I mean,
Name of the book.
Hey, don't go without me, okay? I want to get a picture. Bless you, James. Every now and then, a person comes along and has a different view of the world than the usual person. Doesn't make them crazy. I mean, an acute perception. I mean, that doesn't make you crazy.
Did you talk normal?
However, sometimes it can drive you crazy, an acute perception.
I wish we'd talk normal, because I don't understand half the garbage you're saying.
He appeared headed for the wall, and he hit it. He hit it a couple of times.
I was told in Taos, New Mexico, that I was going to play this part in Jungle Fever. I was going to be the head of the DEA, Drug Administration in Mexico. And they were paying me this incredible amount of money, and I only had 17 lines. And this was more money than I'd ever been paid in ever. And I thought, I'm being set up. Somebody's going to kill me in Mexico. I started an orgy scene with some women and shooting cocaine. Now, I'd only been snorting cocaine. I started shooting it, and I started drinking, and I ended up down in Houston, where I proceeded by blowing myself up in a dynamite chair, and I'd been out doing a whole... anyway, I blew myself up in this dynamite chair, and lived through that, went through a whole nother thing, and finally ended up back in Houston, having gone back to LA, back to Taos, doing this whole runaround, and then from there was taken to Mexico to play this guy. I was drinking 28 beers a day. I was drinking a half a gallon of rum with a fifth of rum on the side and maintaining. And I was doing 3 grams of cocaine, but now I'd been shooting cocaine, and like now I was taking off everything. They wouldn't even give me a drink, so I completely flipped out, you know, and it's amazing I didn't die. Anyway, I started having these incredible hallucinations. I stripped all my clothes off thinking that I would live that way, and went out through these lights and things into the jungle, following these light patterns through the jungle. Well, I mean, it's amazing I wasn't killed by a poisonous snake or something, you know, in the middle of the night. And I remember thinking it was World War III, and the explosions were going off, and bombs were bursting everywhere, and the Marines would come in under the railroad tracks, and people were being gassed, and I was like, you know, I know that I physically got in a fight with somebody, I know that, somewhere in the dark, and dogs attacked me, and all sorts of things happened that were real. I ended up in the morning naked on a major highway somewhere in Mexico, you know, and people were standing at the buses and so on, and I felt if I had a rock in one hand and my other hand empty, that I'd be okay walking down the middle of this highway. Police came and got me and started whipping me to put clothes on. I refused to have clothes on. They threw me in one jail after another, and so on and so forth. And I was seeing maps on the wall and trying to escape, and it was a nightmare.
I mean, he reached the point where he was insane. I mean, he reached the point, you know, I went to the hospital to visit him. I mean, say hello to him, and between hello, how are you, was maybe 10 minutes, you know, for 3 words. And then, are you here?
He said to me, this one's going to be a tough one, Mom. And I said, well, Dennis, I'm sure you can make it. But Tom and I we left the hospital, and we finally just stopped and went to a motel. We stayed all night in Pomona, and I don't think we said anything to each other for hours, just literally hours. And I just was really apprehensive. I didn't know that I would ever see him alive, but partly because people had told me what terrible condition he was in.
I remember calling Central City Hospital and, you know, talking to the doctors, and they were saying, you know, we really think he's practically brain dead, and we're going to have him committed to an insane asylum.
I finally got out, and I was coming back. Had a girlfriend pick me up to drive me back to Taos, New Mexico. On the way there, I told her that I was going to kill myself as soon as we got back because I would never be able to act again, and that was my life. And I would never be able to work again because I couldn't gesture, I couldn't talk, I couldn't speak. She got me on an airplane, flew me back to see my doctor, and my private doctor. He looked at me and said, "My God, they didn't give you enough Progentin. He shot me up 20 times with this stuff." He said, "I think that ought to do it." I got up in bed, I put my pants on, and he said, "How do you feel?" And I said, and I put my hand in my back pocket, and I said, "My God, look what I just," and this hand raised, and I went, and I spoke a sentence. And I said, "It's a miracle." He said, "No, it's not a miracle. They didn't give you enough of this drug." When he came back, I didn't even really recognize him. His face had contorted. He was obviously very disturbed. I never drank again, never took a downer, never smoked any grass, and now secretly for a year, and went to meetings saying I'm an alcoholic. Sometimes I get into a Narcotics Anonymous meeting and I'd have a half ounce of cocaine in my pocket. I said, "I'm an alcoholic." And now I just snorted it, and I never shared with anybody. It's the first time I was ever secretive about anything. And I ended up incarcerated again, the same illusions and all the things that I had the first time. And this time I was really lucky to have gotten out at all.
He will survive anything. I think he does have 9 lives. It's almost supernatural. He should have been dead a long time ago.
I thought it was going to take a lot longer than it did. I visited him at the hospital and took walks with him on the beach. During that period, we'd go to a little coffee place down the Venice walkway.
I can't say I was 100% confident that it would work out all right all the time. But I always believed in his strength, that somehow he'd pull out of it.
Dennis has always cared about life. He didn't perhaps care about the method of his life, but he's always cared about life. He's always cared about what he wanted to do. And he's always wanted to do something that was creative. I guess he felt that he hadn't done all he wanted to do yet. There was no chance in the world that he would not come out of it.
The thing that has always saved me, and the only thing I ever really had was like as an actor, was the role and my performance and how much I cared about that and how much I really love acting.
Dennis called me up one day and introduced himself, and he said, "David, I have to play Frank Booth because I am Frank Booth." And I kind of thought about that for a few seconds and sort of, was shaking a hair, and I knew I had the guy.
Mommy. Oh, Mommy.
I'd heard the stories, I think, like everybody else, that he was a madman and that the drugs and everything had really turned him into something insane. But I'd also heard before starting the show that he had cleaned up, so I wasn't sure who I was going to meet. And it's funny, I do remember the first meeting real well. We were outside the studios down in Wilmington, and I was sitting on a back of a camera truck. And I'd heard he was there that day, so I kind of kept my eyes open for him. Sure enough, he came walking around the corner. He had a red cotton shirt on and a black and white coat. His hair was back gray, and he looked like he owned a restaurant or something. I mean, the guy was so put together.
I'll send you a love letter. Straight from my heart, fucker. You know what a love letter is? It's a bullet from a fucking gun, fucker. You receive a love letter from me, you're fucked forever. You understand, fuck? I'll send you straight to hell, fucker.
I saw this thing coming to life, and with unbelievable power. And, you know, the feeling on the set, you know, was, it was like very, very, very quiet and disturbing, you know, quiet when, you know, we'd finish a take. Dennis just latched onto Frank Booth very well.
It just astounded me. Definitely, Dennis and Frank Booth worked out the worst aspects of his alter ego.
I always thought that he'd pull through. He was like this, maybe he was like a comic book character in my mind. I think of like Superman.
Release the woman, motherfucker! What a fucking piece of it. Right now? Huh? You think you got the market cornered? You think I'm not fucking crazy? Go ahead, try me. Try me, you fuck.
Why don't you just chill out a little bit and figure out which side you're on?
I would if I could.
I'd like to do a few more acting jobs, which I'm going to do. I'd like to direct another movie, maybe 2 more movies in the style that I'm doing them now, which is basically other people's work and writing. Then I want to write something. I want to make a personal film about the demise and fall and rebirth of Dennis Hopper, and make a film about it while I'm still young enough to play that guy.
You wanna be a bird?